Alright, I said in the last video and have been saying throughout several videos over the past year, I need to show you guys the Rio in case you've ever seen it in the background and wondered about it. Not really the flavor of this channel, but I wanted to show you guys real quick anyway, so I'll try to keep this quick since I know most of you guys aren't really going to be interested in the Kia Rio, but you might be wondering why the heck I put wheels on it, rims, whatever you want to call it and all that, and there's actually a lot more done to it than that. Well, I wouldn't say a lot more, but I've actually done a few, oh that's the wrong key, a couple bolt-on modifications to this, which is actually really hard to find because nobody really, where's my hood here, does any performance modifications to these because nobody really makes any parts for them. But I found a few, and I found a few that were hidden in secret, for lack of better words. Where's my hood prop? This is all really hard to do one-handed. So there's a company called K-Tuners and then a company called Avila Motorsports that makes a few things for these, but the stuff I found, they didn't really have anything I wanted. It's just like suspension stuff, and like I think one of them might make a generic catback exhaust system or something like that. One of them did make a header for it, but it looks like they since discontinued it. But I actually have an AEM cold air intake on it, but AEM and no company that I can find markets a cold air intake for the Rio or the Hyundai Accent, which is the exact same freaking car, because nobody modifies these cars. They're cheap little four-cylinder cars, like cheapest of the cheap, as cheap as they come. You know, people just get them for point A to point B and little old grannies and stuff like that, so there's really no market for modifying these, making them faster. But what I found, not only with the cold air intake, but also, if you can see that purple there, I don't think that's actually an underdrive pulley, it's just a lighter aluminum crank pulley if I remember correctly. You have to look up parts for the Hyundai Veloster. So I did my research and looked at a bunch of under the engine bay pictures here to make sure it all fits. So it's the same engine. If you get the NA Hyundai Veloster, the non-turbo model, companies actually advertise some parts for those because they're a sporty car, unlike the Rio or the Accent, but it's got the exact same engine. So I was able to find underdrive pulley by Non-Stop Tuning. They make it for the NA Veloster, and knowing that it was exactly the same, and I closely looked at pictures and all that, and they matched and everything, I'm like, hey, that'll fit the Rio. And then on the AEM cold air intake, same thing. They advertise it for the Veloster. I studied a lot of the pictures, like I said, under the hood and everything, and the airbox routing and all that, and they are pretty much exactly the same. So the intake for the Veloster, the NA version, the non-turbo base model, it fits the Rio. So that's why I have those on there. I may have already mentioned in the video, but on the other channel, before I went to this car only channel, I actually have a whole playlist of stuff on the Rio, so I got videos on all that, going into more detail and installing. So I'll put a link in the description to that playlist if you want to see that stuff. But I originally bought this brand new in 2018, even though it's a 2017 model. I'd been watching them for a few years because I was running a bunch of old poopy broken down cars that always seemed to be needing fixed, so I was always weighing it in my mind whether or not to grab one of these, because they retailed for $15,000 brand new if you got the base model LX with the crank windows and the stick shift. But I kept regularly seeing them on sale in the spring when they would be wanting to move in the new for that year's model. They'd still have some of the leftover sticks from the previous year. They'd always mark them way down because of that, because they had a hard time moving them. But this specific year, since 2017 was the last year of this body style, they marked them down more than I had ever seen, because they really wanted to make room for the brand new ones that year, because they had the brand new body style that everybody was after. So I ended up getting this brand new for $11,500, if you can believe that. And funny story, I was actually in the market to get a C5 Corvette, even looked at a few and test drove one at the same time that I bought this, because that's what my plan was. I was going to get my Vet. Has been my, well, let's say compromised dream car forever, but we were down to one vehicle when we were both working, so I kind of had no choice but to go ahead and go grab this thing. And when I seen it for $11,500, I'm like, well, I go check it out, and then I drove it, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. So that's how we ended up with the Rio instead of the Corvette, because it was a need, whereas the Vet was a want. And I mean, I could go buy this that day that we had that issue on the weekend before we all had to be back to work on Monday, whereas to find the perfect Vet for $12,000, that was going to take some searching, so just went with the Rio. But it had little 195s from the factory, so you know, it handled kind of squishy in the corners, so that's why I upgraded to these. Not only does it make it look way better, obviously, or at least I think so, I really like the combination there. But I went 205 on the width and 17-inch instead of the factory 15s, I believe. So it gave us a lower profile tire with a wider width, so the handling just improved astronomically going to those, so that's why I did that. And then I wanted a little more, you know, power, and so I did a cold air intake and that aluminum pulley there, which did make them a little faster. Like I said, if you check out that playlist linked in the description, I have 0 to 60, 0 to 100 runs with it stock. And then after I did everything, and it's definitely faster after, and that's even with the upgraded bigger wheels and tires there that absolutely weigh more than the factory setup. And it's still quicker with just that pulley and intake, so it definitely made a difference. If I still had the factory wheels on it and tires, it would make even more of a difference, but in those acceleration videos I had the upgraded wheels and tires on it as well, and it was still quicker. So not only did it help it get going a little quicker, but it also improved the fuel mileage by a couple miles per gallon. So I daily drove it for 2 or 3 years, and then I sold it to my stepdaughter as her first car, and she beat it up and got all kinds of dents and scratches and the curb rash on the wheels there while she had it. And then the mom bought it, and the stepson drove it around for a while and ruined the synchronizers on pretty much every gear, either hot rodding it or not knowing how the heck to shift properly. I don't know. So she's a little beat up now, unfortunately, after being through 2 teenage drivers. But yeah, that's the Rio. So doubtful that anything else will be done to it. I always had dreams and aspirations to turbocharge it because I thought it would make the ultimate sleeper, and I actually looked into swapping the turbo version of that 1.6 out of the Veloster Turbo, but like everything's different. Like it's the same engine other than, you know, obviously the internals are beefed up to handle the boost and such, but like the entire wiring harness and everything being a Hyundai, it's different than Kia, so you can't just throw it in there. You would have to do like a complete custom wiring job to get it to work, and then like the speedo wouldn't want to work and all that crap, and then tuning it would be difficult. So it's probably cheaper than, I thought it would be easy just to do the turbo swap from the Veloster Turbo, but because none of the wiring's the same and it's completely different, nothing plugs and plays, that's actually the more difficult option. So it'd be better just to build the engine and throw a turbo kit on this. Well, it'd have to be a custom turbo because nobody makes a turbo kit for a Rio. But anyways, that's what I always wanted to do with it, but that's out of my hands now. So it's pretty much just a backup car, so I don't think there'll be any further modifications. But there we go, we covered the Rio if any of you guys were interested. And again, link in the description to the playlist if you want to see more on it from the other channel. But thanks for stopping by and checking this one out, and I'll catch you on the next one.